Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's so good to be back. Honestly, it is so exciting. It's kind of different working with a new format, but all smiles here. We've already had some colleagues comment on it, and it's fun. It's a great little project we do, and we love the feedback we get. So please, comment, DM, share, whatever it takes. We just love to get the word out there, and we love interacting with you guys. If it wasn't for you guys out there, there'd be precious little point of Brandy and I doing this show. It's all about what you guys want to see. We pick subjects that we think are going to entertain you and educate you and give you a moment where you're like, oh, I didn't know that. But we're always open to ideas and suggestions. And if we don't get to it this episode, we'll get to it on our next one. We are planning on coming back in the spring, not to get ahead of myself. So there's lots happening, but I'm super excited to be back, and I'm super excited to be wearing a shirt that isn't nearly as boring as the one I was wearing yesterday. So, keeping with our theme this week, so I'm just going to grab some water. Keeping with our theme this week about trees, this word here is difference. As you can see, my art and my handwriting got no better over the summer. In fact, it looks like I made them worse. But anyway, I digress. And we all, everybody knows what a tree is. They're instantly recognizable. You ask somebody, picture a tree, most of the time they're going to think of like an apple tree or a Christmas tree or something. We all have an association with a tree. But it's the nitty-gritty, the science behind it, what's changing, what are things looking at, that really makes it. So I thought what we would do is we'd kind of walk together and we would discuss the changes that we see and what trees require throughout the season. So first and foremost is early spring. So as we touched on last year, maybe you guys don't remember, but it's when plants wake up from their dormancy. So you've got your, and I'm going to go with the deciduous here. And you've got your winter tree, okay? And it's sitting there, and it's got its roots, and its roots are locked in a cube of ice. Well, as the light returns, which if you remember when we spoke about photosynthesis yesterday, we discussed light. As the light returns, it also brings the warmth. So now the sun is hitting this, and it's thawing the ground. It's melting that ice block that is built up over the winter. As this water starts melting, these roots can start moving. I mean, ice, something encased in it, it's not moving. So once this starts going, now once it starts drying out and evaporating, well, now those roots can start breathing again, and there can be a gas exchange, and they can start moving. And what will end up happening, and I know you've all seen this, it's I think one of the most exciting spring times. One that I hear a ton of chatter about from colleagues and customers and family, and I always get excited, is when you start seeing those tight little buds coming on the trees. And a one that everybody, I think, here in Calgary at least recognizes are the pussy willows, where you start seeing them and they start cracking open and the trees are getting a green hint. And you see all of that happening. So what's going on there? What's happening with that tree? It's waking up. The light's hitting it, it's warming it up, it's melting it, now the roots can breathe. As the light is hitting those buds that, have looked dormant and dead all winter, well, now the roots are uptaking that water and they're hitting there, and there's enough light to start the process of photosynthesis. There's a payoff. The amount of energy it requires to get that water up there is being replenished and added to by the process of photosynthesis. So what this tree needs now that it's actively waking up and it's coming back to life, I mean, it was alive the entire time, but it was dormant, much like how I sleep. I'm just kidding. I don't really sleep, but much like my 13-year-old sleeps. This starts coming back. So what ends up happening is you want to give it the best chance it's got for these leaves to come bursting out. You want to give it the best chance it's got so that in the spring it's going to come out of the gates running. It's going to hit the season hard. So it's going to need fertilizer. You can do a general, a 20-20-20. You can do a specific tree fertilizer. If it's an evergreen, you might want to go with one that has an acidity to it. All different types. If it's a fruit one, you might want to add one that promotes better blooms and fruit growth. So you want to find the right fertilizer that's better for you. And again, this isn't a discussion on fertilizers, but remember there's water solubles, there's granulars, there's slow release, there's fertilizer states. My preference, as always, is the water soluble, because what we often see happened again this year, the spring comes, with it comes the sun and the warmth. Don't worry, my sun isn't finished. How can you possibly have a sun without a hat and a smiley face? I don't know. I don't. But the sun is hitting it and it's drying this water up, and this water is evaporating. And you do not want it to dry out, especially at this part. Like I said, this water getting up here to get these leaves open is integral. So it needs water and it needs fertilizer. Water-soluble fertilizer, there you go. And what else you want to do is you might want to start putting your additives into your soil. So you want to start mixing, you know, your peat moss, your compost, rock mineral dust, biochar. There's any number. Again, whatever blend you like or you prefer, coconut coir is what you want to start mixing into the soil. And that's going to add some nice organic material. It's going to loosen the soil up. You know, it's had 4 foot of snow and ice on it. It's compressed. You're just going to take a cultivator. You're going to work it in. You're going to get those nutrients in. You're going to fertilize. You're going to water. And you're going to give this tree the best possible chance. And as you're doing all of that, these buds are going to be getting a little bigger. And what else you'll see, again, depending on the tree, is you're going to start seeing the flower buds forming. Now, it's much the same on an evergreen. Obviously, you won't see the leaves and the buds coming, but you will see the buds on the ends starting to form out. Of course, the one I pruned doesn't have a good example, so let's see if we can find one real quick. Here we go. And what you'll see is these buds on the end is where your new growth is going to get. So although it doesn't lose the needle, it does still have buds. And that's what you're going to be looking at in the spring for an evergreen. So you've got your flower buds, you've got your leaf buds, you've got all this happening. So there's a lot going on in the tree in the spring. And then we get to late spring. So now we're well into the season. It's warm and everything is out. And you've got the same thing, except now you've got your stem and you've got your nice full canopy. In the case of an evergreen, you've got all those new needles and those new candles growing. If it's a food tree or a blossoming tree, you've got your flowers. Maybe you've got your flowers before you've got your apples or your pears. It might be an early fruiting tree. You might already have fruit developing on it. Okay, so whatever's happening, but this is summer. And now it's not just waking up. Late spring and summer, your tree's actively growing. Okay, so you're still going to be fertilizing. You're still going to be watering. If you added enough amendments, you probably don't need to add any more amendments to the soil. Soil is good, but you want to keep that water and you want to keep the fertilizer up. This year we had a rather wet month, but that was fine. The trees loved it. And what's going to happen now is this is going to actively be going. The flowers should be attracting pollinators into your yard. It's going to be growing. It's going to be just great. You get to that real hot time of the summer, got to make sure you're adding water. You do not want the tree to dry out at any stage, but let the tree tell you when it needs water. A lot of people can be guilty of overwatering their trees. So this is great. I kept the stuff I pruned yesterday. So look at this. Yesterday it was all alive and now it's all drooping and it's not great. When your tree looks like this, it's saying, hey, I need water. okay, those cells are depleted. All the water is ran out of this end, and it isn't going into the tree, and it's not getting any water back. So those cell walls are depleting. So your tree's looking like this. You water it, ta-da, there you go. So it's the same thing. You don't want to overwater it. You don't want a shallow root structure. You want the tree to tell you, but you want those roots to go deep. You want those roots to look for their own water. If they can't find it, you add water. If Mother Nature's doing it for you, so much the better. So you want to fertilize, you want to water, but it's not as integral as when you're doing it in the spring. And then we come to late summer, autumn time. And what starts happening, like we said, is, well, I hate to say it, I even hate speaking about it, but the sun is leaving us. And as the sun goes, it's taking its light away. Well, now our leaves are changing color. They're losing the pigment, because they're losing the chlorophyll because of the photosynthesis. So now this tree is still alive. There's still stuff happening, just not at the same level as before. So what you need to do now is you need to stop the fertilizer. Good rule of thumb, mid-August, early September, late August at the latest. You don't want to fertilize. You do not want to promote new growth going into what can be a frost season. So you're not going to fertilize this, but you are going to water it. And yet, again, if Mother Nature is doing her job, then that's fine. You don't have to worry about it. There's no natural active growth happening. The tree's pulling back its reserves. It knows what's happening. It's not getting the food. These leaves aren't producing the glucose it needs to grow. So it starts entering its period of dormancy. But it does still need water. Water. I know people who see the leaves changing and they think, oh, well, don't need to water anymore. Absolutely not. Keep that water happening. If the tree doesn't drink it, it'll evaporate, it'll stay in the ground, whatever. But make sure your tree doesn't suffer, especially going into the winter. You want it to enter the winter in the best possible condition. If it is a new planting, or it's somewhat of a tender tree, or some shrubs, roses and whatnot, you might want to put mulch around the base. Protect any shallow roots from any kind of frost burn, helps with moisture retention, all of that good stuff. If indeed it is a rose and it's a bit more tender, you might even pile mulch up around the stem. You certainly don't want to do that on a big tree. It would cost you a fortune in mulch. So that's essentially what you want to do, is you just want to kind of help the tree go to sleep. Make sure it's had a good drink, and make sure it's tucked in if it needs it with the mulch. And then you can just let it go. So there's no fertilizer, and then the tree is going to go into its full dormancy. Nothing is going to be happening, no leaves, no buds, the ground's going to freeze, the roots can't do anything, and now it's just waiting until the cycle comes, the spring comes, those buds are there, and we go through it all again. So that's essentially kind of what a tree needs and what's happening inside the tree during the 3 seasons. I'm not going to talk about winter, it's dormant, it's asleep, there's not much to talk about. So that's where we're at. Tomorrow, we're going to discuss planting a tree in the autumn. Spring and summer, we know how to plant a tree. The autumn, there's some different rules. Again, we're talking about fertilizers and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people immediately think, oh, planting needs fertilizer. In the autumn, you probably don't. In fact, spoiler alert, you don't. So that's how that's going to go. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. We're also going to announce our competition winner. And then Thursday, stay tuned, because Lord only knows what's going to happen when we go plant a tree. So have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, everyone.